Hello Tamers, Cyrdrop back in name, and on to day 2 of our decklist countdown towards BT24 Time Stranger's release, with today's decklist being a revisit of the Liberator Dragonkin deck, following, a few changes given availability of certain cards, as well as giving it one last hurrah in reference to the transition from the Year of the Snake to the Year of the Horse. And before we get into it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help with the algorithm. And without further ado, let's kick this off. Starting with the egg deck, it goes without saying that we still run BT21 Gigi as the main egg, since it allows you to climb up plays, make climb plays, in response to seeing your opponent's security being removed, since you reduce that evolution by 1 in response. And once again, that actually gets, further compounded by the memory gain inherits that the deck runs that also trigger off in response to seeing the opponent's security being removed. So that's a more balancing act as usual. That's it for the egg deck. Now on to the rookie lineup. As with BT23, we finally have a Elizamon core in the form of a 4-4 split between BT21 and the new BT23 Eliza, with BT21 being the deck searcher and BT23 being the archetypal evolution reducer. Though there's a bit of a disparity between the two, since BT23 doesn't have the sought-after mem gain inherent like BT21, though thus capping its usefulness a bit. And then to round off rookie lineup, we're looking at 2 copies of the old Fogey himself, being the BT21 Agumon as an on-play recursion piece, and also another extra DP inherent. As for tech picks, I'm going to forego it this time, and going about it differently, since with BT24, we're getting a full new iteration of the Lizamon line. Thus, I might as well go over what new tools that the deck can work with now. As in the rookie lineup, we get a new Elizamon in there. That being an on-play, pitch 1 Dragonkin or Reptile trait for a draw 2. Which, in all honesty, helps with consistency since you're drawing 2 off of that effect. And it also has some usefulness, since off of that pitch, you could, say, pitch a Dimetro in order to set up for your Lamia plays later, since you'll be able to use, since it does include a Warping Lamia in that lineup. And that's it for rookies. Now on to level 4s. In which case, for the Dimetromons, we're looking at a 3-3 split between BT21 and Promo Dimetro in the lineup, with BT21 allowing you to cheat out your Owens, while the Promo is the early progress body, though it also can be used for its security effect to allow you to cheat out a cost 4 lower Liberator trait from hand or trash, with both having the mem gain inherits. And then following that up is the pseudo main level 4 of the deck, that being a full playset of the Promo Flangemon, having been made more, readily viable and affordable following the release of the Billion Bullets LM set. With its inclusion, definitely goes without saying in how well it gels with the deck strategy, being a much more with this being a early option of aggro, since it's a pretty sticky body, because of the armor purge, with it being a raid body that gels well with its your turns effect. Whenever it sees its own attack being redirected, you're able to burn one security, thus playing into the Digimon and other forms of, well, keeping turn or progress for the deck. Since again, Gigi Inherit can go off of the effect, allowing you to Digivolve up and have that raid swing become a bit stronger. Or you pretty much set up in order to claim and just be a early form of chipping, considering that Armor Purge will allow you to keep the rookie underneath. And then as for BT24 support in this section, we're looking at two cards. That being a new Dimensionmon, who instead of being focused more towards chipping, it actually helps as a form of protection. Since as long as it's on the board, if any of your other Dragonkin were ever to be removed by effect, it's able to bounce itself back to the bottom of the deck in order to prevent it from leaving, in order to prevent that ally from leaving. As well, it also carries the same memory gain inherit, thus making a good plus. And then aside from that, we also have a stealthy support from the Time Turner side in the form of the new Cyclomon in there. That being a rush raid body for the deck to make use of, since it's also Dragonkin. As well as giving a raid inherit, allowing it to pair well with your other effects, specifically BT21 Lamia, since you now give the deck an inherent raid instead of through the loophole of the Legend Arms package from before. And speaking of that Cyclomon, it also pairs well with Lamia in a different way, since it also is a viable target off of your Lamia inherit to cheat out a Dragonkin from hand, since it reaches that threshold effect, and given that it's a rush body inherently, it effectively makes it a better EX for Guilmon. And that's it for level 4's this deck. Now on to level 5's. In which case, we're looking at a 4-3 split between BT20 Paildra and BT21 Cyberdramon now. Considering that, once again, excuse me, I forgot, well, as you already noticed from last time I covered Dragonkin, I now foregone the Legend Arms package in the deck. And this build more or less focuses on full aggro plays. Since again, with Paildra as the main level 5 here, allowing you to Digivolve up and gain piercing and extra DP on the Digivolve, as well as being able to attack immediately, thus playing into the deck's usual game plan, as Paildra will swing, and then trigger off, swing, and maybe run over something, do it with piercing, and then immediately check security, thus triggering Gigi's effect, and allowing you to Digivolve up before the first security battle, and allowing you to get off all that when Digivolving effects of the new Digimon you climb into, before you then trigger off the extra check from the inherit. And to bolster some bit of control for the deck, the BT21 Cyberdramon here actually helps in the fact that you burn one security without checking, without needing to ram into security, and then force your opponent to add a card from hand to security to replace the one that you burned away. Thus, a little bit of hand ripping added to the effect. And again, you'd trigger off any of your effects that would trigger in response to seeing opposing security being removed. And following that up with the BT24 support, we get the new Warping Lamia, as we've seen with other of the newer iterations of the Liberator lines. Since this Lamia is definitely better in a number of ways compared to BT21. Since again, and though in exchange for losing progress early on. Since, once again, able to be warped off of Eliza as long as you have Owen on board, and a Dementro in trash. And also receives BT21 Cyberdraw's effect as a on Digivolve and when attacking effect instead, thus allowing you to run it pretty aggressively more, since you would then be triggering the effect before needing to check into security to then trigger off Gigi. In addition, it also retains that same effect to allow you to cheat out bodies onto the board. As in that case, you actually have a lot more freedom, considering that in order of events, you're pretty much looking at triggering that on an attack, since you don't need to immediately trigger. Then you Digivolve up, and then you check into security as normal. Thus, you then get to trigger off the Lamia inherent much more easily now, since you aren't timing it, since the timing is right before a check instead of in the middle of a check. And that's it for level 5 lineup. Now on to level 6s. In which case, the star of the show is still going to be BT21 Medusa as the face of the deck. Since she'll be your main form of aggro, being a Sek +1 body array with progress built in, excuse me, and the ability on evolve and on attack to delete one opposing Digimon with low TP, thus triggering the alternatives effect whenever she sees any opposing Digimon get deleted. You're able to spawn a token on a petrification token on the opposing side, which, whenever that gets deleted, it will end up burning away one of their security, and is effectively a useless body on their side as well. Thus, adding in more aggro options into the deck, since you have targets that are easy to pop, instead of causing your stuff to crash into security, and allowing you to clear the way for game. And following that up, and considering that the petrification tokens have some synergy with it, I still run the one copy of Medieval Galantmon just because it's such a good workaround with the petrification tokens, since you effectively make a useless token on the opponent's side that they can't suspend, but you can through Medieval Gallant, thus saying up the, Menace himself onto the board at a reduced cost of 7 if you have anything if there's another unsuspended Digimon besides the token on board. And goes without saying, the Alliance and Vortex pairs well, since you can then use Vortex to swing into that petrification token, and Alliance as long as Medieval Gallant is on board, and another ally Digimon board to make use of it to also further in with the ingression. As for level 6 from BT24, we're actually looking at new Medusamon, who's a lot more forward, so to say, still holding on to the archetypal progress, but now switching security +1 for raid and piercing, thus allowing you to get anything pesky. In addition, for the on Digivolve, you get a delete lowest immediately, and then you can immediately bot deck 2 cards from the opponent's trash to then give them 2 petrification tokens. In addition, you're gaining plus 2000 EP per Digimon on their side, immediately off of that on Digital effect, thus setting up 2 petrification tokens that they can't use, thus kneecapping scrambles since they no longer have an empty board. And due to how sequencing is, you could actually bypass on delete effects, since you'll then immediately be returning 2 cards from the trash. Well, returning that card from the trash back to the bottom of their deck, thus negating the on delete. Then from there, you also have a lot more more memory efficiency, considering that Medusa is a cost 3 evolution instead of the 4 of the normal one. And that's level 6 done. Now on to level 7 for the deck. In this build, currently, that being the 1 copy of OmniX for its, more finishing option as a win more. Being able to be 1 form removal once it comes down before triggering off its end of turn effect to unsuspend something and allow it to gain rush and suspend and attack without suspending. Though, as many know for BT24, that definitely is going to change as we're getting the new BT24 Starakomon as the new level 7 for the deck, who in himself is quite powerful considering all the keywords on him, with a whole lot of highlights. Since you're practically dunking on the opponent with more lethal and a bit of a sticky body, considering it has Armor Purge. Since it has a whole host of effects that feed into each other. Since on Digi, you're able to burn any security from the opponent's side, thus allowing you to snipe out certain security cards instead of aiming for the top, and thus feeds into the alternates popping of the opponent's, of any opposing Digimon in response to that removal. In addition, you also have an alternates protection effect, allowing you to pop the opponent's lowest DP body in order to protect any of your Dragonkin bodies from leaving. And that's it for the Digimon lineup. And on to Tamers. In this case, we're looking at a 4-2 split of the BT21 Owen and BT18 Owen as the memory sitter and deletion option, albeit it's a lot more harder to suspend down between the two, with BT21 being your main form of end of turn aggro, since you grant any of your Dragonkin extra DP and piercing as well, in addition to allowing them to attack at the end of the turn, thus playing into the deck's aggro style. In which case, we also get a new Owen from BT24, since the new Owen is a lot more, is another one of the spin Liberator Tamers, allowing to spin himself down, bounce him back to deck, to then bring out another Owen from hand, replacing itself, with a lot more easier suspend condition, since when it actually suspends itself whenever he sees a Dragonkin Digimon Digivolve up into a Dragonkin. Digivolving into a Dragonkin, I mean. Thus, you then get the trigger and gain and allow that Digimon to get plus 3000 DP and the ability to attack, making it far more easier to trigger off any other combo plays otherwise. And that's it for the Tamer lineup. Now on to options, in which case, for archetypal options, we're looking at 3 copies of Radiant Serpentine, considering how good it is, both being a form of removal and able to reduce its cost once threshold's met, effectively having its play cost, as well as allowing it to be laid on the board in order to allow you to digivolve up for free, as well as being a security bomb of removing the highest DP if checked in security. And following that up is the rest of the utility options. In this case, a 2-2-3 split between Red Men Boost, Red Scramble, and offensive training for the usual use as we've usually used them for. Excuse me. As for BT24 support, we're looking at Owen's unique emblem, in which case it helps to further along the deck's consistency options, since the on-play, as usual, would either bring out Liza or an Owen from hand or trash, and sets itself up for delay, and then its delay in response to an Owen being suspended allows your archetypal Digimon to go into a Dragonkin and Liberator trait at the reduced cost of 3, thus allowing for more combo plays doing so, especially considering how easier now with the BT23 Owen and BT24 Owen having a much easier suspend condition. And with the emblem being included in the deck upcoming, it technically clashes with the Raging Serpentine a bit, though depending on how space looks, it all depends on how meta is. So you could choose to run a certain ratio of the unique emblem to Raging Serpentine, though again, the unique emblem is definitely, in my opinion, will pretty much either replace Red Scramble or Red Men Boost in some capacity, though Will may dig into Raging Serpentine, give or take. And that's pretty much about it for the deck itself. As for combos, it pretty much is straightforward as is, since I've already been this topic already in the old video back then. Since you're pretty much looking at a whole lot of aggro and chipping away your opponent's security pretty quickly with all of your effects, allowing you to, be forms of keeping turn, since you're constantly removing the opponent's security, or pretty much allowing you to control board a bit to allow you to climb into some very big bodies to also smash the opponent's face in. But overall, this has been a little bit of a different take, considering that I've pretty much already beaten this horse to death, really, in that last video. But yeah, that has been my look on piloting the Dragonkin deck during the BT23 format. And Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help keep up as we continue on with this decklist countdown towards BT24's release at the end of this week. And this is Cyberdraw signing off.